Ancient stones whisper secrets of entire worlds that vanished. The mystery of forgotten civilizations calls to us across thousands of years. By the end of our journey, you will understand the true reasons why great cities fall and what their stories reveal about our own future. We will uncover why a desert metropolis with running water was abandoned and what happened to the people who built a city with no streets. What forgotten story from the past do you think holds the most urgent lesson for us today? A city without streets forces us to rethink the very definition of a community. Çatalhöyük was a labyrinth of mud brick homes pressed so tightly together that the entire settlement became a single, interconnected structure. To visit a neighbor, you walked across their roof and climbed down a ladder through an opening in the ceiling. Life unfolded on these rooftops, a sprawling, elevated landscape that served as the city's true public square. Inside, the walls of these homes were canvases, adorned with vibrant paintings of wild animals, hunting scenes, and intricate geometric patterns. Families buried their dead beneath the packed clay floors, binding the generations together in a cycle of memory and ritual. Here was a society of perhaps 8,000 people, one of the largest of its time, yet archaeologists find no evidence of a palace, a temple, or a central governing building. There were no rulers apparent in the ruins, no grand tombs set apart for an elite class. This suggests a remarkably egalitarian way of life, a collective organization built on shared practices and beliefs rather than top-down command. They were farmers, herders, and skilled traders who procured obsidian from distant volcanoes to craft their tools and weapons. So what led to its eventual abandonment after more than 1,000 years of continuous habitation? Was it climate change, resource depletion, or a slow transformation of their social fabric? The silent, streetless city offers no easy answers, only a profound question about the durability of a society built on collective identity rather than centralized power. From this early experiment in urban living, we now turn to a civilization that achieved the opposite, organizing itself on a colossal, centralized scale along the life-giving banks of a great river. Along the life-giving Indus River, a different kind of miracle was taking shape. While other early empires raised pyramids and palaces to their gods and kings, the people of the Indus Valley were building for everyone. Their great cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, were marvels of practical foresight, laid out with a precision that would not be seen again for thousands of years. Imagine walking down a broad, straight street in the Bronze Age, your path crossing another at a perfect right angle. Beneath your feet, a network of baked clay drains and pipes carries waste away from homes and out of the city, a sanitation system unmatched in the ancient world. Every brick, from the foundations of a merchant's house to the walls of the great public bath, conformed to a standard ratio. This was a civilization that thought on a grand, unified scale, coordinating the construction of cities separated by vast distances with the same set of rules. They were master traders, their standardized weights found alongside goods from distant Mesopotamia, evidence of an economic network that spanned the known world. Yet for all their achievements, they remain profoundly silent. Their written script, etched onto seals and tablets, has never been deciphered. We hear their story only through the objects they left behind, and those objects tell a strange tale. There are no grand statues of warrior kings, no opulent royal tombs filled with gold. The most imposing structures are not palaces but granaries and civic buildings. This conspicuous absence of the typical symbols of power suggests a society that may have been governed by merchants, priests, or a collective council, a unique social experiment that flourished for centuries. So what caused this stable, sophisticated world to crumble around 1900 BCE? The river that was their lifeblood may have betrayed them, shifting its course or drying up due to climate change, disrupting the agriculture that supported their urban centers. Or perhaps their very success sowed the seeds of their decline, as the slow salinization of the soil from intensive farming diminished their harvests. The end was not a sudden cataclysm but a slow fragmentation, a fading away. People did not vanish, but the grand vision of the planned city did, leaving behind a puzzle of abandoned streets and an unreadable script. From the silent, orderly plains of the Indus, our search for lost worlds leads us to a place where an entire civilization chose to build its cities in the most improbable location imaginable, high in the clouds. A narrow canyon winds through the desert, its high walls of rose-red stone blocking out the sun. Then the passage opens and you stand before a sight that stops the heart, an immense temple facade carved directly into the living rock glowing in the light. This is Petra, a city born not from building up but from carving down. The Nabateans, a people who began as nomadic traders, transformed this hidden desert gorge into the dazzling capital of a commercial empire. Their wealth flowed from the control of incense trade routes, the frankincense and myrrh that were as precious as gold in the ancient world. Yet their greatest genius was not in acquiring wealth, but in surviving to enjoy it. In a land that received only a few inches of rain each year, they became masters of water. They engineered a complex system of dams, channels, and cisterns that captured every drop of fleeting rainwater, directing it through ceramic pipes to supply a population of 30,000 people and create lush gardens in the desert. Their monumental structures, like the famous treasury and the towering monastery, are a stone-cut library of global influences, with designs borrowed from Greek, Egyptian, and Assyrian architecture, a testament to Petra's role as a true crossroads of the ancient world. Recent surveys using laser scanning technology have peered beneath the sand, revealing a vast urban landscape of hidden monuments and suburbs, proving the city was far larger and more intricate than anyone had dreamed. So how does such a brilliant and resilient civilization fade from memory? The Nabatean kingdom was eventually absorbed by the expanding Roman Empire, and as trade routes shifted to sea lanes, Petra's economic lifeblood slowly drained away. A major earthquake in the 4th century crippled its vital water system, and one of the world's most advanced cities was gradually abandoned, its secrets kept by local Bedouin tribes for centuries until a Swiss explorer rediscovered it in 1812. The story of Petra is a powerful lesson in sustainability, a demonstration of how human ingenuity can create an oasis against all odds, and a reminder that even the greatest of cities are tethered to the economic and environmental systems that support them. From this desert marvel carved from stone, we now journey to a civilization that performed an equally astonishing feat, not in a desert, but in the heart of a dense, unforgiving jungle. Deep within the Cambodian jungle, a city larger than modern Manhattan once thrived. This was Angkor, the capital of the Khmer Empire, and its lifeblood was not stone but water. The Khmers performed a miracle of engineering, transforming a landscape of violent monsoon floods and dry season droughts into a stable, agricultural paradise. They built a vast, intricate network of canals, reservoirs, and moats that acted like a massive heart and circulatory system for the city. Their largest reservoir, the West Barre, is an artificial lake spanning 5 miles, a testament to their ambition. This hydraulic genius allowed them to store water from the rainy season and release it during the dry months, enabling multiple rice harvests each year and supporting a population that may have exceeded 1 million people. At the center of this watery metropolis rose breathtaking temple mountains, with Angkor Wat being the most magnificent. These were not just places of worship, but cosmic diagrams in stone, representing the Hindu and Buddhist universe, with Mount Meru at its center, surrounded by oceans. The entire city was a physical manifestation of spiritual belief, a sacred landscape where water connected the human realm to the divine. For centuries, this system sustained one of the most powerful empires in Southeast Asia. But then the climate began to shift. Recent evidence from tree rings points to a period of severe instability, with prolonged droughts followed by exceptionally intense monsoon rains. Can you picture the strain this would place on even the most advanced water system? The very canals and reservoirs that defined Angkor's prosperity may have become its vulnerability. During drought, the empty reservoirs created crippling water shortages. When the extreme rains came, they could have overwhelmed the engineering, washing away the vital infrastructure. This environmental stress, combined with shifting trade routes and the growing influence of neighboring kingdoms, likely pushed the great hydraulic civilization past its breaking point. By the 15th century, the elite had largely abandoned the city, and the jungle began its slow, patient reclamation. The story of Angkor is a humbling lesson in the delicate balance between human ingenuity and the power of nature. From this jungle metropolis that mastered water, we now set sail for the Mediterranean, to a civilization of master seafarers whose sudden disappearance remains one of history's most compelling mysteries. A world away from the Cambodian jungle, on the sun-drenched island of Crete, a civilization thrived with a spirit of grace and lightness utterly unique in the ancient world. This was the world of the Minoans. Their great palace at Knossos was not a fortress but a vibrant, sprawling complex, a labyrinthine center for administration, craft, and ritual. Imagine walking through courtyards designed for public gatherings, past walls alive with frescoes of leaping dolphins and elegant courtiers. The architecture itself was ingenious, featuring clever light wells that channeled sunshine deep into the building and sophisticated terracotta pipes that provided drainage far ahead of their time. Their society, sustained by a powerful fleet that controlled Mediterranean trade routes, felt so secure that their early palaces were built without defensive walls. Art and religion suggest women played prominent public roles, often depicted as priestesses overseeing ceremonies. One of the most captivating images they left behind is the bull leaping fresco, a dynamic scene of acrobats vaulting over a charging bull. Was this a sacred ritual, a deadly sport, or a form of public spectacle? We may never know for certain, for the Minoans also left a silent challenge for the future, a written script known as Linear A, which remains undeciphered to this day, locking away the secrets of their economy and their beliefs. Their vibrant world met a sudden and catastrophic end around 1450 BCE. The colossal volcanic eruption on the island of Thera, one of the largest in human history, sent tsunamis crashing into the northern coasts of Crete and blanketed the island in ash. This natural disaster would have crippled their navy, poisoned their farmland, and shattered their trade-based economy in a single, devastating blow. In the ruins of Knossos, archaeologists find evidence of Mycenaean Greeks from the mainland moving into the power vacuum, their own Linear B script eventually replacing the native Minoan language. The graceful Minoan culture was absorbed and transformed, its memory fading into legend. Some scholars wonder if this story of a sophisticated island civilization brought low by the sea is the fragmented, real-world origin of the myth of Atlantis. The Minoans leave us with a haunting legacy of artistic beauty and sudden fragility, a reminder that even the most brilliant and secure societies can be undone by the raw power of the planet. From a civilization lost to sea and ash, we now turn to another, whose end was equally sudden, and whose preservation was so perfect it feels as if time itself stopped. A different kind of disaster unfolded on a clear August morning in 79 CE. Mount Vesuvius did not simply bury the bustling Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, it captured them. The volcano's eruption created a perfect, tragic snapshot of daily life, freezing a single moment for nearly 2,000 years. While Pompeii was smothered under a deep layer of pumice and ash, preserving the shapes of its buildings and public spaces, Herculaneum met a different fate. It was engulfed by successive waves of superheated gas and volcanic material that instantly carbonized wood, food, and even the papyrus scrolls in a luxury villa's library, turning them to charcoal in an instant. This horrific process created a level of preservation so exquisite that archaeologists have found wooden beds, carbonized loaves of bread still in the oven, and political campaign slogans still painted on the walls. The most haunting discoveries are the voids in the hardened ash. By pouring plaster into these spaces, researchers have created casts of the victims in their final moments, capturing their postures of despair and the very clothes they wore, offering an unbearably intimate connection to individuals from a Tuesday morning 2 millennia ago. Recent technological leaps have begun to unlock even deeper secrets. Those carbonized scrolls from Herculaneum, so fragile they would crumble to dust if unrolled, are now being read for the first time using sophisticated imaging techniques that can detect the ink on the charred layers. This virtual unwrapping may one day reveal lost works of philosophy, poetry, or science from the classical world, a library thought to be destroyed, now whispering from the ashes. What does this unparalleled record teach us about the Roman world? We see a society with a rigid social structure, yet also one of remarkable public amenities with bakeries, fast food taverns, and complex water systems. The ongoing excavations continue to yield surprises, unearthing evidence of strong Greek cultural influence and sophisticated engineering designed to withstand earthquakes, a common threat in the region. The story of these two cities is a profound lesson in both the fragility of life and the incredible durability of its imprint. From a civilization preserved by a single, catastrophic day, we now ascend to a civilization that thrived for centuries against one of the most challenging environments on Earth. High on the Andean plateau, the air thin and the sky immense, stand the silent sentinels of Tiwanaku. At an altitude of 12,800 feet, this was a metropolis built at the roof of the world, a place where stone and sky conversed. Its architects raised structures from blocks of sandstone and andesite so massive, their method of transport and precise cutting remains a mystery. The Kalasasaya temple complex is a giant stone calendar, its alignments perfectly marking the solstices and equinoxes. Through its grand gateway, the sun would rise on specific days, casting light on certain corners, a testament to a profound understanding of the cosmos. The most iconic of these monuments is the Sun Gate, a single block of stone carved with a central deity often called the staff god, a figure holding vertical scepters, whose image seems to echo through later Andean cultures, including the Incas who would claim this land centuries later. But Tiwanaku's true genius was not just in its astronomy, it was in its ability to coax life from the harsh Altiplano. They transformed the marshy shores of Lake Titicaca into an agricultural engine using a system of raised fields. These were elevated planting platforms surrounded by canals. The water in these canals would absorb heat from the intense sun during the day, releasing it slowly throughout the cold nights, creating a protective microclimate that shielded crops from frost. This ingenious method produced staggering surpluses of potatoes, quinoa, and other crops, enough to support a powerful state whose influence stretched across the southern Andes. So what could topple such an adaptable and advanced civilization? The answer may lie in the very environment they so brilliantly mastered. Around the year 1000 CE, a prolonged drought is thought to have gripped the region. Lake Titicaca's waters receded, dropping below the levels of the intricate canal systems that fed the raised fields. The protective microclimates failed, and the agricultural foundation of the empire crumbled. This environmental catastrophe likely triggered political unrest and a fragmentation of their far-flung territories. People abandoned the great ceremonial center, and over time, even the memory of its builders faded, leaving only the colossal stones as a puzzle for the future. Recent archaeological work adds a fascinating new layer, suggesting Tiwanaku may have been less a densely packed city and more a vast ceremonial magnet, a spiritual capital that drew pilgrims from across the region for grand festivals and rituals. This reimagining makes its collapse even more poignant, as a changing climate could disperse a belief system as easily as it could empty a granary. From this high civilization brought low by a retreating lake, we journey to another that faced the opposite challenge, a desert culture that thrived by conquering water itself. The same desert that preserved the Nazca lines holds clues to their creator's genius for survival. Scattered across this arid plain are spiraling stone openings that descend deep into the earth. These are the Puquios, a sophisticated network of underground aqueducts that tapped into subterranean water. The Nazca people were hydraulic engineers, building and maintaining these filtration galleries to bring life-giving water to the surface in a land where rain might not fall for years. Their survival depended on this constant, reliable flow, which fed canals and nourished fields of cotton, beans, and maize in the desert valleys. This mastery of a scarce resource makes the purpose of the giant surface drawings even more compelling. Could the sprawling geoglyphs, the monkey, the hummingbird, and the spider have been part of a grand spiritual plea for the very water that flowed beneath them? Many of the lines lead directly to Puquios or areas where water would gather after rare rains, suggesting a profound connection between the art on the ground and the lifeblood of the civilization. Their intricate ceramics support this, depicting shamans transforming into powerful animal spirits, perhaps intermediaries appealing to the gods for a stable climate. For centuries, this system of physical and spiritual engineering worked, but around 500 CE, the system failed. Geological evidence points to a devastating 1-2 punch, a period of intense drought followed by catastrophic flooding from a super El Niño event. The very Puquios that sustained them may have been clogged or destroyed by debris from the flash floods, while the farmlands were scoured away. Their delicate desert ecosystem, so carefully managed, was shattered beyond recovery. The lines remain, a breathtaking monument to human creativity, and a stark warning about the fragility of even the most ingenious societies in the face of a volatile climate. From this desert civilization that etched its prayers into the earth, we venture into the heart of the Amazon, where a vast, complex society once thrived beneath the canopy. The Amazon rainforest holds a secret far older than its untouched appearance suggests. For generations, we pictured it as a pristine wilderness, home only to small, nomadic tribes. But the ground beneath the canopy tells a different story entirely, one of vast civilizations that shaped the land itself. Recent archaeological discoveries are completely rewriting the history of the pre-Columbian Amazon. The key to this lost world is a mysterious, fertile soil known as Terra Preta, or Black Earth. This is not a natural soil, but a human-made marvel. Ancient peoples created it through a sophisticated process of adding charcoal, bone, and compost to the otherwise poor rainforest earth. The result was a soil so rich and resilient that it remains productive centuries after its creators vanished. This was not a small-scale garden project. Patches of terra preta are found across the Amazon basin, indicating widespread, intentional landscape management on a colossal scale. Then came the view from above. With satellite imagery and LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to see through the dense forest canopy, researchers uncovered a hidden geography. They found enormous geometric earthworks, perfect circles and squares carved into the landscape, and the remains of large fortified settlements. Even more astonishing were the networks of straight, raised causeways connecting these settlements for miles across the forest floor. This was not a scattering of isolated villages, but a connected, complex society with a clear social organization. The scale of this construction points to a population that likely numbered in the millions, not the thousands. They were not merely living in the forest, they were engineering it. So what happened to these millions of people? Their decline seems to have begun before European ships ever reached the Americas. While introduced diseases from Europeans were catastrophic for native populations, these Amazonian societies may have already been facing their own crises. Shifts in regional climate, such as prolonged droughts, could have strained their agricultural systems. It is also possible that the very complexity of their society, managing such a vast, modified landscape, eventually reached a tipping point. The discovery of these civilizations forces us to abandon old assumptions about the limits of the tropical environment. It shows us that human ingenuity can flourish in the most challenging places, but it also highlights a recurring theme, that even the most adaptable societies are vulnerable to a changing world. From this lost world beneath the Amazon canopy, our journey takes us to another civilization that defied its environment, building a glittering capital in the heart of the Arabian desert. Deep in the Sahara, a kingdom of cities rose where none should exist. The Garamontes did not merely survive the Libyan desert, they mastered it, building a sophisticated civilization that thrived for over 1,000 years. Their secret lay hidden beneath the burning sands, a revolutionary network of underground tunnels known as Pharaohs. These were not simple wells, but complex irrigation channels that sloped gently for miles, tapping into ancient fossil water reserves that had lain undisturbed for millennia. By harnessing this geological inheritance, they transformed arid basins into lush, productive oases, creating a green archipelago in a sea of sand. Their capital, Garama, was a startling sight, an urban center with multi-story mud-brick buildings, public baths, and even villas adorned with Mediterranean-style mosaics. This was no isolated outpost, but the vibrant hub of a vast trans-Saharan trade network. The Garamontes were the crucial intermediaries, the desert's master navigators who controlled the flow of gold, ivory, and exotic animals from sub-Saharan Africa to the Roman ports on the coast, receiving wine, olive oil, and fine pottery in return. Their influence is etched into the landscape in the form of elaborate pyramidal tombs and fortresses that guarded their precious water sources and trade routes. For centuries, they were thought to be a minor power, but recent satellite imagery has shattered that view, revealing the ghosts of hundreds of previously unknown settlements stretching across the desert. This was not a small kingdom, but a widespread and densely populated state. So how does such a resilient and ingenious civilization fade from prominence? Their greatest strength became their ultimate vulnerability. The fossil water they depended on was not a renewable resource, and over centuries of intensive agriculture, the underground aquifers were slowly depleted. The Pharaohs began to run dry, and the green islands of the desert started to shrink. This environmental pressure was compounded by growing economic strain from the Roman world and possible shifts in the already harsh climate. The kingdom gradually fragmented, its trade routes declined, and its people were eventually absorbed into the expanding Islamic empires. The story of the Garamantes is a powerful testament to human adaptation, but also a sobering lesson in the limits of even the most brilliant engineering when it relies on a finite resource. From this civilization that conquered the desert with ancient water, we set our sights on a people who conquered the world's greatest ocean, navigating by the stars to settle countless islands across the Pacific. The colossal stone faces of Easter Island have long been symbols of a society that recklessly destroyed its own world. Yet that familiar story is crumbling under the weight of new evidence. We are now learning that the Rapa Nui people were not the architects of their own ecological doom, but masters of ingenious adaptation. Theirs is a story of cultural resilience, not collapse. On this remote speck of land, the most isolated inhabited place on Earth, they developed a complex society that thrived for centuries. They transformed the landscape into a vast, productive garden by creating lithic mulch, intricate fields of broken rock that conserved moisture, enriched the soil with nutrients, and protected young crops from the wind. This was not a people stripping their environment bare, but working in a careful, symbiotic relationship with it. Their greatest cultural expression, the Moai, stand as a testament to this sophisticated society. How did they move these multi-ton statues across kilometers of rugged terrain without wheels or draft animals? The prevailing theory suggests a dynamic rocking motion, walking the Moai upright in a coordinated, communal effort that must have been a sight to behold, a physical manifestation of social unity and spiritual belief. This cultural brilliance extended to their unique script, Rongo Rongo, a set of glyphs carved on wooden tablets that no one has yet been able to read. After European contact brought devastating new pressures, the Rapa Nui demonstrated their resilience once more by evolving their traditions. The Birdman cult emerged, a ceremonial competition where warriors swam to a distant islet to retrieve the first sooty tern egg of the season, a ritual that shifted societal power from ancestral chiefs to physical prowess. The true cause of the population's tragic decline was not an internal ecological failure, but the external shocks of history. Introduced diseases for which they had no immunity, brutal slave raids that carried off thousands, and the social disintegration that followed foreign intervention were the real culprits. The lesson of Rapa Nui is not a simple warning about cutting down trees, but a far deeper one about the strength of human culture in the face of profound isolation, and ultimately the vulnerability of that culture to a sudden connected world. From this remote island of enduring mystery, our search for lost civilizations takes us to the highlands of Africa, where a powerful kingdom built its own holy city in the clouds. A powerful kingdom in the Ethiopian highlands minted its own gold coinage at a time when much of the world was still bartering. The Empire of Aksum was no remote outpost, but a central hub in a global network, its ships and caravans forming a bridge between the Roman Empire and the distant markets of India. Ivory, gold, emeralds, and even live exotic animals flowed from the African interior through its ports, generating immense wealth that built a capital city of stone palaces and monumental architecture. The most striking symbols of this wealth and ambition are the great stelae that pierce the sky. These are not simple stone markers, but elaborate representations of multi-story buildings, carved from single blocks of granite with intricate details of false doors and windows, some towering over 100 feet high. They were funerary monuments for the elite, their sheer scale a declaration of power meant to be seen for miles. Yet Aksum's influence extended far beyond commerce and stone. In the 4th century, a king named Azana made a decision that would shape the identity of a nation for millennia, converting the empire to Christianity. This made Aksum one of the very first Christian kingdoms in the world, developing its own unique Orthodox traditions that have endured uninterrupted to the present day. So what could cause the decline of such a formidable and devout state? The empire's lifeblood was trade, and when the rising power of Persia and later the Islamic caliphates began to dominate the sea lanes and redirect commerce, Axum's economic foundation slowly eroded. At the same time, a changing climate may have played a role, with some evidence suggesting that centuries of intensive agriculture and a possibly drier environment strained their resources. The empire gradually receded from the world stage, its power contracting into the highland fortresses of Ethiopia, but its legacy was never truly lost. It lives on in the ancient churches carved from solid rock at Lalibela, and in a profound spiritual tradition that claims the ultimate sacred relic, the Ark of the Covenant, rests within a chapel in Axum to this day, guarded by a single monk. This belief underscores the city's enduring status as a holy center, a place where a lost empire's faith outlasted its political power. From this highland kingdom whose spiritual legacy endures, we descend into a very different landscape, where a civilization performed the opposite miracle, building a glittering capital not on solid ground, but in the heart of a vast watery swamp. The marshlands of southern Mesopotamia seem an unlikely cradle for civilization, yet here, in the challenging environment of the Tigris-Euphrates Delta, the Sumerians performed a miracle of collective will. They built Uruk, the world's first true city, a place where so many fundamental aspects of our modern world first took shape. To manage the unpredictable floods of the rivers and the thirsty soil, they engineered complex irrigation canals, turning the marshlands into productive fields that could feed a concentrated urban population. This cooperative effort to control water required a new level of social organization, likely driving the creation of hierarchies, administrators, and laws. The surplus of food allowed people to specialize, becoming potters, weavers, metalworkers, or scribes, no longer tied directly to the land. Out of this administrative necessity, they gave humanity one of its most powerful tools, writing. The first marks were simple pictographs pressed into clay tablets, used for mundane accounting, to record quantities of grain or numbers of sheep. Over centuries, these symbols evolved into the sophisticated wedge-shaped script we call cuneiform, a system flexible enough to capture not just inventories, but also literature, law, and scientific observation. It was in Uruk that the world's first literary hero, Gilgamesh, was born. His epic, inscribed on clay tablets, grapples with profound questions of friendship, the quest for immortality, and the meaning of building a civilized world, themes that feel strikingly modern even today. Archaeological excavations reveal a city of astonishing scale and complexity, dominated by massive temple complexes like the White Temple and the Ina Precinct, dedicated to the goddess Inanna. These were not just religious centers but the economic and administrative hearts of the city, their storehouses overflowing with the goods that powered this new urban experiment. The evidence from these ruins shows clear social stratification, with elaborate residences for a privileged elite contrasting with simpler dwellings for the laborers. What does the story of Uruk tell us about the birth of civilization? It suggests that innovation flourishes when people are forced to collaborate to overcome environmental challenges. The need for collective water management and defense forged a new kind of social contract, one that enabled the concentration of human talent and sparked inventions like the wheel, the first legal codes, and our very system of timekeeping based on the number 60. The Sumerian legacy is not merely a relic of the past, it is the invisible architecture of our daily lives, from the circle of a clock face to the structure of our laws. From these fertile Mesopotamian plains where cities first reached for the sky, we journey across the ocean to the Mexican highlands, where another mighty civilization built its capital in the thin air of a mountain basin. A city larger than imperial Rome once rose in the highlands of Mexico, its true name lost to the ages. We know it only by the name the Aztecs gave it centuries after its fall, Teotihuacan, the place where men become gods. This was an anonymous metropolis, a colossal urban center built by a people whose language, their very identity, remains an enigma. They left behind no deciphered royal inscriptions, no chronicles of kings, only the breathtaking scale of their ambition. The city was a masterpiece of urban planning, its grid aligned with celestial movements along a central artery known as the Avenue of the Dead. At one end stood the Pyramid of the Moon, its form echoing the shape of the sacred mountain behind it. Further along, the staggering bulk of the Pyramid of the Sun dominated the horizon, built over a natural cave that was considered a portal to the underworld. But the most intricate artistry was reserved for the Ciudadela complex, home to the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. Its facade was a sculpted tapestry of undulating serpents, their heads emerging from petals of stone, representing the powerful plumed serpent deity that would later be known as Quetzalcoatl. This was more than just a city of stone. It was a living cosmology, a map of the universe rendered in architecture. Recent explorations have tunneled deep beneath this temple, revealing a hidden world that confirms the city's profound spiritual significance. Archaeologists discovered a chamber filled with an astonishing array of ritual offerings, from jade statues and pyrite mirrors to the skins of large cats and birds of prey. Most startling of all were pools of shimmering liquid mercury, a substance so rare and difficult to obtain in the ancient world that its presence suggests a connection to the underworld, a symbolic river flowing in the darkness. This was a place of immense power and mystery, yet Teotihuacan was not an insular, homogeneous society. Excavations in its residential compounds reveal a truly cosmopolitan center, with distinct neighborhoods for Zapotecs from Oaxaca, Maya merchants from the south, and other peoples from across Mesoamerica. These enclaves maintained their own cultural practices, their own pottery styles and burial rites, while living under the overarching order of the Teotihuacan state. How was this diverse, anonymous civilization governed? The conspicuous absence of grand royal palaces or monuments to individual rulers suggests a form of collective rule, perhaps a council of powerful families or a theocracy led by a priestly class. The city's stunning murals, which cover the walls of apartment compounds, offer another clue. They do not glorify conquests or individual rulers, but instead depict a pantheon of nature deities, rain gods, and agricultural fertility, all showering bounty upon the people. The art speaks of a society whose ideology was rooted in a shared spiritual connection to the natural world. So what could cause the collapse of this meticulously planned, spiritually unified world around 550 CE? The evidence points not to a sudden invasion, but to a slow unraveling from within. A period of prolonged drought likely strained the agricultural resources that fed the massive population, estimated at over 100,000 people. This environmental stress may have ignited long-simmering social tensions over resource distribution and power. In the city's final decades, we find signs of deliberate, symbolic violence. Certain statues were defaced, and fires were set specifically in the temples and along the Avenue of the Dead, particularly in the elite compounds. This was not random destruction, but a targeted rebellion against the ruling class and the ideological system they represented. The people who had built a city fit for gods ultimately turned on the very institutions that held it together. They gradually abandoned their metropolis, leaving its grand avenues and vibrant murals to the encroaching dust. Teotihuacan's legacy is a profound paradox, a civilization that achieved staggering urban and artistic heights while choosing to remain collectively, mysteriously, anonymous. From this grand, nameless metropolis, we travel north to a very different landscape, where another civilization performed its own miracle of survival in the arid heart of the American Southwest. High on the sun-baked plateaus of the American Southwest, entire communities chose to build their world within the shelter of the cliffs themselves. The ancestral Pueblones engineered elaborate multi-story settlements in dramatic canyon alcoves, their homes accessible only by hand and toe holds or ladders that could be pulled up behind them. This was a society that moved inward, from pit houses on the open mesa tops to the spectacular, protected cities nestled in the rock. At its peak, a single dwelling-like cliff palace contained 150 rooms and 23 kivas, the circular, subterranean chambers that were the spiritual heart of their community. Life here was a vertical endeavor, a daily climb that connected homes, storage rooms, and sacred spaces across multiple terraced levels. Their survival was a testament to ingenuity, relying on sophisticated dry farming techniques that conserved every drop of precious moisture for their crops of corn, beans, and squash. Their artistic spirit flourished in this harsh landscape, expressed through beautifully crafted black-on-white pottery and intricate turquoise jewelry traded from distant sources. While the cliff dwellings offered a formidable defense, their true genius may have been environmental, providing natural insulation from the desert's searing summers and freezing winters. So why, after centuries of adaptation, did they abandon these architectural marvels around 1300 CE? The answer is written in the rings of ancient trees, which record a prolonged, devastating drought that gripped the region for decades. This megadrought would have crippled their agricultural systems, depleting not just water but the very game and wild plants they relied upon. This environmental catastrophe likely intensified social tensions and conflict over dwindling resources, prompting a slow, deliberate migration south and east toward the Rio Grande and other areas with more reliable water. Their story is not one of disappearance but of relocation. Their cultural traditions, their knowledge, and their people endured, with their descendants including the modern Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples who maintain a vibrant connection to this ancient past. From these communities that sought refuge in the cliffs of North America, we journey to the opposite side of the world, to the Yemeni highlands where a civilization built its legendary capital not in canyons but among the clouds. Their wealth was not measured in gold alone, but in the very air itself, a civilization built on the intoxicating scent of sacred resins. This was the Kingdom of Saba, the historical heart of the legendary land of Sheba, a realm whose prosperity blossomed from the desolate valleys of southern Arabia. For over 1,000 years, the Sabaeans mastered the art of survival and commerce in an unforgiving landscape. Their secret was a brilliant synthesis of water and trade. They engineered the Marib Dam, a colossal structure of earth and stone that tamed the violent seasonal floods, channeling that precious water into a network of canals that fed fields and orchards. This single project transformed a desert into a green oasis, supporting a population of 50,000 people and creating the agricultural surplus needed to power a mercantile empire. Their true economic engine, however, was the monopoly they held over the trade in frankincense and myrrh. These aromatic resins, harvested from scraggly trees that grew only in this region, were in relentless demand across the ancient world. They were essential for religious rituals in temples from Rome to Jerusalem, used in medicines, and burned as luxuries in the homes of the elite. Caravans of countless camels carried this fragrant treasure north along well-established routes, returning with silver, textiles, and other goods, making Saba a byword for almost mythical wealth. This is the backdrop for the famous tale of the Queen of Sheba's journey to the court of King Solomon. Whether a literal historical meeting or a powerful myth, the story captures a profound truth. the awe that this sophisticated and powerful southern kingdom inspired in its northern neighbors. The Sabaeans themselves were meticulous record keepers, carving their history and laws into stone in a unique, angular script. These inscriptions document a complex society with its own gods, legal codes, and commercial contracts. Though many of their literary texts remain just beyond our understanding, their stories still locked in stone. How could such a well-managed and prosperous civilization fade from prominence? Their decline was a slow unraveling of the very pillars that supported them. The magnificent Marib Dam, after centuries of faithful service, began to fail. Maintaining such a complex piece of infrastructure against the relentless forces of silt and flood required a strong, centralized state, and as political will perhaps waned, the dam's final ruptures would have been catastrophic, wiping out the agricultural foundation of the kingdom. At the same time, the world was changing around them. The Romans and others were developing new maritime routes across the Indian Ocean, bypassing the arduous and expensive overland caravan tracks that Saba controlled. The lifeblood of their trade began to slow to a trickle. The story of Saba is a powerful lesson in the interconnectedness of environment and economy, showing how even the most ingenious systems are vulnerable to both internal decay and external shifts. From this Arabian kingdom that harnessed the desert's fragrances, we cross the globe to the fertile heart of North America, where a different kind of metropolis once rose along a great river. A city larger than London once stood at the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers, a bustling metropolis of earth and timber that defies our every assumption about ancient North America. This was Cahokia, the heart of the Mississippian world, a city that at its peak around 1050 CE pulsed with the energy of 10 to 20,000 people. Its skyline was not one of stone but of soil, dominated by the colossal Monk's Mound. This earthen pyramid, covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet, required a staggering 22 million cubic feet of soil to be moved basket by basket, a monumental undertaking that speaks to a highly organized and motivated society. At its summit sat a massive ceremonial building, the residence of a powerful ruler who likely oversaw the city's complex spiritual and economic life. But the true genius of Cahokia lay in its celestial alignment. Just to the west of the Great Mound stood Woodhenge, a vast circle of towering cedar posts that functioned as a sophisticated solar calendar. On the morning of the equinox, a priest or astronomer standing at the center of this circle would see the sun rise directly over a key post, marking the change of seasons with perfect precision. This was not abstract stargazing, it was practical science woven into the fabric of their agricultural and ceremonial cycles, ensuring that planting and harvests were timed perfectly to sustain the massive urban population. The city itself was a vibrant melting pot. Archaeologists find pottery styles and artifacts from the Great Lakes, the Gulf Coast, and the Appalachian Mountains, evidence that Cahokia was a cultural magnet drawing people from across the continent. Some of their artwork, including depictions of a feathered serpent and a warrior standing on a chunky stone game pole, bear a striking resemblance to motifs from distant Mesoamerica, hinting at possible, though still debated, long-distance cultural exchanges. Perhaps most telling is what Cahokia lacked for most of its history: defensive walls. This suggests a period of remarkable regional peace and cooperation, a Pax Cahokiana that allowed for such a concentration of people and resources. So why was this flourishing city, this ancient American wonder, completely abandoned by 1350 CE? The answer seems to be a slow convergence of pressures. Centuries of intensive construction and firewood consumption may have led to local deforestation and resource depletion. A cooler period in the climate known as the Little Ice Age could have shortened growing seasons and stressed their agricultural system. This environmental strain likely ignited social unrest, challenging the authority of the ruling elite and fracturing the social cohesion that held the city together. The people did not vanish, they simply dispersed, migrating out to form the smaller chiefdoms that Europeans would encounter centuries later. The legacy of Cahokia forces us to completely rewrite the story of pre-Columbian North America, revealing a landscape not of isolated tribes, but of sophisticated urban centers capable of grand, coordinated vision. From this sprawling North American metropolis, our journey takes us across the Atlantic to the Anatolian highlands, where another civilization built a capital that defied convention in an entirely different way. Deep in the Anatolian highlands, a civilization emerged that would challenge the great kingdoms of the ancient world. The Hittites forged an empire of formidable military might and legal innovation, their capital at Hattusa a masterpiece of Bronze Age engineering. Encircled by cyclopean walls that snaked across the landscape, the city was protected by monumental gateways, their stone guardians of lions and sphinxes staring out eternally. Within these defenses lay the true treasure of the Hittites' royal archives housing thousands of clay tablets. These meticulous records, written in a cuneiform script that we can now read, reveal a society of astonishing complexity. They were pioneers of large-scale iron production, a technological advantage that gave their armies a critical edge. Their legal code showed a nuanced understanding of justice, drawing clear distinctions between intentional and unintentional crimes and prescribing fines instead of brutal retribution, a remarkably humane approach for its time. This legalistic mind extended to their governance, where a clear system of royal succession provided political stability rare in the ancient world. The Hittites were not just warriors and administrators, but skilled diplomats. Their greatest achievement in this arena is the oldest known peace treaty in human history, negotiated with Egypt after the epic, inconclusive Battle of Kadesh. This clay tablet, a copy of which hangs at the United Nations today, stands as a testament to their belief in order and negotiated settlement over endless conflict. So how did this powerful, sophisticated empire vanish so completely? The end came around 1178 BCE as part of the Great Late Bronze Age collapse, a catastrophic systems failure that swept across the eastern Mediterranean. A perfect storm of climate change inducing severe drought, widespread crop failures, and mass migrations of the so-called sea peoples shattered the intricate trade networks and political structures that empires like the Hittites depended on. Their capital was burned and abandoned, their story silenced for over 3,000 years until the patient decipherment of their language began to give them a voice once more. From this Anatolian superpower whose collapse was tied to a wider, interconnected world, we travel to a tropical island where a civilization performed a different kind of miracle, sustaining a dense population in a challenging environment for over 1,000 years. A civilization's survival can be engineered from the sky itself. On the island of Sri Lanka, the Sinhalese kingdom of Anuradhapura achieved precisely this, mastering the rhythm of the monsoon to sustain a capital city for more than 1,300 years. Their entire society was built around a profound understanding of water. They constructed an intricate, cascading network of reservoirs and canals that captured the torrential seasonal rains, storing this precious resource to support a vast population through the dry months. Artificial lakes like the Tissawewa and the Abhayavapi were not mere ponds, they were colossal inland seas of freshwater, engineered to irrigate endless fields of paddy and supply a bustling urban center. This was a hydraulic civilization in its most advanced form, a society whose architecture, economy, and daily life were all shaped by the flow of water. But Anuradhapura was more than an engineering marvel, it was a spiritual beacon. At its heart grew a sacred fig tree, a sapling brought from India that was directly linked to the Buddha's own enlightenment. This tree, now over 2,300 years old, is the oldest documented living tree planted by human hands, and it continues to be a site of active veneration today, a living root connecting the present to a distant past. The city's spiritual ambition reached for the heavens in stone as well. Stupas like the majestic Ruwanwelisaya and the colossal Jetavanaramaya were among the tallest structures in the ancient world, their massive brick domes a testament to mathematical precision and organizational power that rivaled the pyramids of Egypt. This was a cosmopolitan crossroads, its influence stretching far beyond the island. Ambassadors from the Roman Empire, traders from China, and monks from across Southeast Asia walked its streets, exchanging goods, ideas, and religious texts. How could such a well-established and internationally connected capital ever be left behind? The end was not a failure of engineering, but a story of shifting political tides. Repeated invasions from powerful South Indian kingdoms gradually eroded the kingdom's strength, forcing the seat of power to move to other cities for security. By 993 CE, the great capital was largely abandoned, its magnificent reservoirs and stupas slowly reclaimed by the jungle. Yet its legacy was never lost. The revolutionary irrigation techniques developed here went on to shape agricultural practices across Southeast Asia. From this island kingdom that turned rainwater into an empire, we cross the sea to the Korean peninsula, where another enduring civilization carved its own unique path through history. Their cities were carved into the very peaks of mountains, a kingdom of high fortresses defying the clouds. This was Goguryeo, a Korean power whose strength was forged in the rugged terrain of the north. For over 7 centuries, their civilization was defined by an unyielding spirit of independence, resisting the gravitational pull of the massive Chinese empires to their west. They did not build on plains, but chose the most defensible peaks, weaving their capitals like Gyeongni and Ansi into the spines of mountain ridges. The walls of these cities were not separate constructions. They were the mountains themselves, enhanced with stone battlements that followed the natural contours, making any assault a brutal, uphill battle against both nature and human ingenuity. Within these sky-high strongholds, they engineered sophisticated systems to capture rainwater and manage streams, ensuring a constant supply even during a prolonged siege. Their identity was a powerful fusion of traditions, blending the nomadic horsemanship of the steppes with the settled life of farmers and the deep spiritualism of the forest. This unique synthesis produced a culture that prized martial excellence above all, a society where the heavy cavalryman, armored and lancing from his powerful steed, was the ultimate symbol of power. Their most intimate legacy, however, is sealed in darkness. The Goguryeo tomb complexes, hidden within man-made mounds, are chambers of breathtaking color. Their walls are alive with vibrant murals, not of conquest alone, but of daily life, with nobles feasting and dancing in elaborate costumes. Other chambers become a celestial map, their ceilings painted with constellations and mythical creatures, depicting a complex cosmology and a profound belief in an astral afterlife. This artistic richness shows a culture confident in its own identity, distinct from its Chinese neighbors, with a unique aesthetic and spiritual worldview. How did such a resilient kingdom finally meet its end? Its very success in resisting larger powers bred formidable rivals. The constant friction with Chinese dynasties and the rising power of the Korean Silla kingdom to the south culminated in a fateful alliance. The Chinese Tang Empire and Silla joined forces, and after a long and bitter war, the mountain fortresses finally fell in 668 CE. Yet Goguryeo spirit was not extinguished. Its legacy flowed directly into the subsequent Korean states of Balhae and Goryeo, and its cultural echoes, from architectural styles to artistic motifs, even crossed the sea to influence the early development of Japanese court culture. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of a culture shaped by its landscape, a civilization that looked down from its mountaintops for centuries, fiercely guarding its own unique way of life. From these high fortresses of Korea, our search for lost worlds leads us to the vast and arid landscapes of the Iranian plateau. For centuries, the high plateau of Iran nurtured a culture as resilient as the mountains themselves. The Elamites forged their first urban society in the rugged landscapes of the southwest, creating a civilization whose distinct voice echoed for nearly 3,000 years. Their world centered on the great cities of Susa and Anshan, hubs of power and commerce where they constructed massive stepped pyramids known as ziggurats. At Çoghazanbil, a magnificent ziggurat rises from the plain, a sacred mountain of baked brick so perfectly engineered that it remains one of the best preserved structures of its kind in the entire world. This was more than a temple, it was a stairway to the gods, a declaration of architectural genius meant to last for eternity. The Elamites were also among humanity's earliest writers, developing their own linear script. Yet this ancient writing remains a locked door, only partially deciphered, keeping the intimate stories of their kings, their laws, and their daily lives shrouded in silence. What little we can glean from their neighbors and from archaeology reveals a society that defied the norms of its time. Their political structure was uniquely flexible, with power alternating between ruling dynasties in a complex but stable system. Even more striking was the prominent role of women, with queen mothers often wielding significant influence and securing the royal lineage, a level of authority rarely seen in the ancient Near East. Their prosperity was built on a foundation of trade, controlling the vital routes that connected the empires of Mesopotamia with the distant Indus Valley. Caravans carried precious metals, semi-precious stones, and luxury goods through their territory, enriching Elamite cities and weaving them into the fabric of the ancient global economy. So how did such an enduring and adaptable civilization finally meet its end? The rise of a new power from the heart of their own land, the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great, eventually absorbed the Elamite territories into its vast dominion. Yet Elam did not simply vanish. Its language, its administrative practices, and its artistic traditions deeply influenced the Achaemenid Persians, becoming a foundational layer for the First Great Persian Empire. Recent excavations continue to uncover stunning artifacts, from intricate metalwork to elaborate seals, that speak of a sophisticated and powerful culture whose legacy was woven directly into the identity of ancient Iran. From this enduring plateau civilization, our journey takes a dramatic turn north and west to a wind-swept archipelago where a different kind of society built a timeless sanctuary from stone. 5,000 years ago, a sophisticated society was building in stone on the remote Scottish islands of Orkney. While much of Neolithic Europe lived in timber and wattle, the Orcadians constructed entire villages from the very land itself, creating homes and monuments of such durability they still stand today. The settlement of Skara Brae is a stunning example, a cluster of stone houses connected by covered passageways, each one furnished with stone beds, central hearths, and even stone dressers positioned against the wall. This was not a primitive encampment, but a planned community with a form of indoor plumbing, a drainage system that channeled waste away from the dwellings. The people who lived here were skilled farmers, herding cattle and sheep and growing cereal crops despite their far northern latitude, and they were connected to a wider world, trading for distinctive volcanic glass from the Isle of Iran far to the south. But their ambitions stretched far beyond domestic comfort. Just a short walk away, they erected the Ring of Brodgar, a huge stone circle surrounded by a deep ditch, and the towering stones of Stenness. These were not isolated monuments, but part of a vast ceremonial landscape centered on a narrow isthmus known as the Ness of Brodgar. Recent excavations here have shattered our understanding of Neolithic Britain, unearthing the foundations of colossal stone buildings with walls nearly 20 feet thick, structures so massive they seem more like cathedrals than simple meeting halls. Inside, archaeologists found evidence of these walls once being painted in vibrant reds, yellows, and oranges, and the debris from feasts on a scale that is almost unimaginable, with the remains of hundreds of cattle suggesting communal gatherings that drew people from across the region. This was likely a pilgrimage center, a sacred destination for the entire Neolithic world. So why did these vibrant, sophisticated communities eventually empty out? The answer seems written in the climate. Around 2500 BCE, the weather patterns shifted, making Orkney significantly colder and wetter. This climatic deterioration would have made farming increasingly difficult and life on the exposed islands more challenging, likely prompting a gradual migration to more hospitable lands. The incredible preservation of these sites, buried by sand for millennia, gives us a window into Neolithic life unlike any other, a frozen moment from a time when these remote islands were a bustling spiritual hub. From these northern islands of stone and ceremony, we travel to the highlands of Vietnam, where a civilization chose an equally dramatic landscape for its own enduring monuments. Their legacy rises from the Vietnamese coastline in graceful brick towers, temples that seem to grow from the earth itself. The Cham Kingdom was a civilization of the sea, its fortunes carried on the waves by master navigators who spoke an Austronesian language, connecting them culturally to distant islanders of the Pacific. For over 1,000 years, their sleek vessels dominated the trade routes between powerful neighbors, carrying precious cinnamon, eaglewood, and tropical spices from the Indonesian archipelago to the ports of China and India. This maritime wealth funded the construction of their most enduring monuments, sanctuaries like my son. Here, artisans achieved the near impossible, constructing soaring temple towers from fired brick without the use of any mortar. The precise technique they used to fuse each brick remains a mystery to modern engineers, creating structures so resilient they have withstood centuries of tropical weather and conflict. The surfaces of these bricks were their canvas, intricately carved with scenes from Hindu epics and the graceful forms of deities like Shiva and the mother goddess Po Naga, a powerful local spirit seamlessly woven into the imported Indian pantheon. This cultural synthesis was the heart of Champa. They adopted Sanskrit for their sacred texts and developed a unique script to record their own laws and history, yet their society pulsed with a distinctly Southeast Asian rhythm. Their decline was not a sudden collapse, but a slow retreat southward under relentless pressure from the expanding Vietnamese state. As the map of Vietnam was redrawn, the Cham saw their territory and control over trade routes steadily diminish. Yet the story of Champa did not end with the fading of its political power. The Cham people endure as a vibrant ethnic minority in Vietnam today, their traditional weaving, music, and religious festivals preserving a living thread to their ancient seafaring past. From the coastal temples of Southeast Asia, we find a similar story of cultural endurance and monumental earthwork in the very heart of North America. Centuries before the Great Pyramids rose in Egypt, a society in northeastern Louisiana was reshaping the earth on a staggering scale. The people of Poverty Point moved millions of cubic feet of soil to construct a vast complex of concentric ridges and towering mounds, a project of communal ambition that dwarfed any other undertaking in North America at the time. Their central site forms a giant semicircle nearly 3/4 of a mile across, with 6 concentric ridges of earth creating a kind of giant amphitheater facing a central plaza. At the heart of this design soars Mound A, an earthwork so massive and shaped so precisely like a bird in flight that it can only be fully appreciated from the air. What makes this achievement even more extraordinary is that the Poverty Point culture apparently thrived without relying on agriculture. They were not farmers, but sophisticated hunter-gatherers who sustained a large, seasonal population through the incredible bounty of the Mississippi River basin, fishing its waters, hunting its game, and gathering its wild plant foods. This was a complex society built not on cultivated fields, but on organized labor and a deep knowledge of their environment. Their influence reached across the continent, with trade networks that brought copper from the Great Lakes, high-quality chert from the Midwest, and colorful jasper from the Appalachian Mountains, all flowing into this ceremonial hub. What was the true purpose of these earthworks? Were they a grand ceremonial center for seasonal gatherings, a sophisticated astronomical observatory aligned with the solstices, or the central marketplace for a vast trading network? The answer is likely all three, a place where commerce, cosmology, and community converged. So why did this unique culture fade away around 1100 BCE? The changing environment of the Mississippi Delta likely played the decisive role. Shifts in the river's course, combined with periods of flooding or drought, would have disrupted the delicate balance of the local ecosystem, scattering the resource base that supported their large seasonal populations and unraveling the social organization that made such monumental construction possible. The story of Poverty Point fundamentally challenges our definition of civilization, proving that agriculture was not the only path to social complexity and grand architectural vision. From the ancient American bottomlands, we ascend to the rugged Armenian highlands, where a civilization built its cities in the shadow of a great snow-capped mountain. Their world was the mountain itself, a fortress kingdom carved from the peaks of eastern Anatolia. The Urartu civilization did not simply occupy the highlands around Lake Van. They mastered them, building an empire of stone and water between 860 and 590 BC. Their strongholds, like the great fortress of Erebuni, were feats of strategic genius perched on seemingly inaccessible ridges. Within colossal stone walls, they constructed vast storerooms capable of holding grain, oil, and wine to sustain their people through years of siege, a testament to their foresight and organizational power. But their true genius flowed through the mountains in channels of stone. The Urartians were hydraulic engineers without equal in their time, carving a network of canals that transformed arid valleys into fertile plains. One of these, an astonishing 50-mile channel, was cut so perfectly that it still brings fresh water to the modern city of Van today, a silent, working monument to their skill. This mastery extended to the forge, where they produced breathtaking bronze works, crafting elaborate cauldrons and warriors' helmets adorned with scenes of gods and mythical beasts, each piece a declaration of their unique artistic identity. Their story, recorded in cuneiform script adapted from their Assyrian rivals, speaks of military campaigns and grand construction projects, all dedicated to their chief god, Haldi. So how was such a resilient, fortified kingdom brought to its knees? The end came from a combination of relentless external pressure and internal strain. Nomadic warriors, the Scythians and Cimmerians, swept down from the steppes, their swift cavalry tactics overwhelming Urartu's static defenses. These invasions likely sparked internal rebellions among subject peoples, fracturing the kingdom from within. This potent mix of foreign invasion and civil unrest, possibly worsened by shifts in the regional climate, left Urartu vulnerable to absorption by the rising Median Empire and the early Armenian kingdoms. Yet their legacy was not erased. it flowed directly into the foundations of Armenian culture, influencing its architecture, its metalwork, and its very spirit of highland endurance. From these Anatolian peaks, our search for lost civilizations descends into the golden sands of the Nubian desert. Their pyramids still rise from the desert sands of Sudan, more numerous than those of Egypt. The Kingdom of Kush was a powerhouse of ancient Africa, a civilization of Nubian pharaohs who did not just imitate their northern neighbors but conquered them. For a century, the 25th dynasty ruled a united Egypt and Kush from their capital at Napata, a period often called the Black Pharaohs. Even after they were pushed south by Assyrian invaders, their kingdom flourished for centuries, moving its capital to Meroë and forging a culture uniquely its own. The pyramids of Meroë are their signature, over 200 steep-sided structures built as tombs for kings and queens. They stand as a silent city of the dead, their sharp angles and distinctively small size creating a skyline unlike any other in the world. Their surfaces were once adorned with intricate relief carvings depicting rulers in acts of piety, often accompanied by inscriptions in their own Meroitic script. This writing system, with its elegant cursive and hieroglyphic forms, is a perfect symbol of the Kushite paradox. We can read its sounds, but we cannot understand its meaning. The language it records is lost, locking away their laws, their literature, and their own accounts of their history. What we do know is that their wealth was as legendary as their archery. Egyptian records famously referred to Nubia as the land of the bow, and Kushite warriors were feared and respected for their skill, but their true power came from trade. They controlled the river routes and desert tracks that connected the riches of sub-Saharan Africa, the gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animals like giraffes and monkeys, to the eager markets of the Mediterranean. This economic engine fueled the growth of Meroë into a major industrial center, most notably for iron production. The city became the Birmingham of ancient Africa, its skies constantly smudged with smoke from countless furnaces. This very success, however, contained the seeds of decline. The massive demand for charcoal to smelt iron led to widespread deforestation, stripping the land around Meroë and likely contributing to soil erosion and desertification. At the same time, new trade routes were opening up that bypassed the Kushite kingdom, and the rising power of Aksum in Ethiopia began to dominate regional commerce. The combination of environmental strain and economic competition gradually weakened the kingdom until it faded from prominence. The story of Kush is a vital reminder of Africa's profound and independent contributions to the ancient world, a civilization of conquerors, innovators, and pyramid builders whose secrets are still partially held by the wind-swept desert. From the golden sands of Nubia, our search for lost civilizations pushes into the vast, open expanse of the Siberian steppe. Their power was not measured in stone monuments, but in the thunder of hooves across an endless sea of grass. The Xiongnu Confederation was the first great nomadic empire of Mongolia, a force so formidable it compelled the fractured Chinese states to unite and build their Great Wall, not as a simple barrier but as a desperate defense. For centuries, this steppe power did not just raid its settled neighbors, it dominated them, extracting vast annual tributes of silk, grain, and wine from a humbled Han China. This was no disorganized horde, but a sophisticated political creation that united diverse tribes across Central Asia under a single banner. Their genius lay in their adaptability, forging a dualistic system of government with separate Eastern and Western rulers, known as wise kings, who answered to a supreme leader, the Xiongnu. This structure gave them the flexibility to manage a vast territory without the need for a single, fixed capital. Recent excavations at royal cemeteries like Gol Mod have shattered the old image of the simple nomad. Deep within burial mounds, archaeologists have found tombs filled with Chinese lacquerware and silks resting alongside silver vessels bearing classical Greek motifs, all mixed with the Xiongnu's own vibrant animal-style art, showing stags and tigers locked in eternal, swirling combat. This was the treasure of a true crossroads empire, a civilization that connected the ends of Eurasia on horseback. Their military supremacy was built on the composite bow, a weapon of laminated wood, bone, and sinew that could launch an arrow with terrifying force from the back of a galloping horse. A Xiongnu cavalryman was a complete weapon system, able to control his mount with his legs while aiming and firing in any direction. So what could possibly break such a powerful and resilient confederation? The end came from a combination of clever external pressure and internal fracture. The Han Chinese perfected a strategy of divide and rule, offering lavish gifts and titles to rival tribal leaders, skillfully exploiting jealousies and ambitions to turn the Xiongnu against each other. At the same time, a series of harsh winters and droughts on the steppe likely weakened their pastoral economy, creating shortages that intensified those political divisions. The confederation splintered, with one faction eventually submitting to China while others migrated west, their name perhaps echoing later in history as the Huns. Their legacy, however, was indelible. They created the blueprint for steppe empire, a model of mobile power and political organization that would be perfected centuries later by Genghis Khan and the Mongols. From this empire of the open steppe, our journey takes us to a completely different kind of island world, one shaped by isolation and a unique, enduring culture. Their world was an archipelago of volcanic peaks rising from the Atlantic, a civilization preserved in isolation like a fly in amber. The Guanches of the Canary Islands were a Berber people who arrived around 1000 BCE, and for 2,500 years they developed in profound seclusion, their culture a living window into a prehistoric North African past that had vanished everywhere else. Each island fostered its own unique adaptations, from cave-dwelling societies to those who built complex stone structures. They practiced mummification, preserving their elite with techniques that eerily mirrored those of ancient Egypt, though developed entirely independently. Their dead were often laid to rest in labyrinthine volcanic caves, and their living communicated across deep ravines using a sophisticated whistled language, a system of sonic signals that carried for miles in the thin mountain air. They were master farmers in a harsh environment, cultivating barley and figs and raising a unique breed of small, hairless sheep, all while building ceremonial platforms and dwellings from the dark basalt rock of their islands. Their fierce independence defined their final chapter. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 15th century, the Guanches mounted a determined resistance. The final holdouts on the island of Tenerife did not surrender until 1496, after years of bloody conflict. So why did this resilient, isolated people ultimately vanish? The same tragic forces that felled so many New World societies were at work here: superior European weaponry, devastating introduced diseases to which they had no immunity, and a systematic campaign of forced assimilation and slavery extinguished the Guanche as a distinct population within a few generations. Yet their story is not one of complete erasure. Their genetic legacy lives on in modern Canary Islanders and place names across the archipelago whisper of their origins. The Guanche represent one of humanity's last encounters with a civilization that evolved for millennia outside the stream of global history, a poignant reminder of the fragile diversity of human culture. From these isolated Atlantic islands, our search for lost civilizations brings us to a very different delta, where a mighty river built the foundations for a sprawling North American metropolis. While the Great Mound of Cahokia dominated the Midwest, a different tradition of earthworks was flourishing further south along the Mississippi. The Plaquemine culture engineered a landscape of power and ceremony from the rich soils of Louisiana. Between 1200 and 1700 CE, their communities were organized around central plazas, with towering, flat-topped platform mounds serving as the foundations for temples and the residences of chiefs. Emerald Mound stands as a breathtaking example, a colossal earthen structure that is the second largest pre-Columbian earthwork in the entire United States. Its broad summit was a sacred stage, a place where spiritual leaders could commune with the heavens and political leaders could oversee the life of the community below. This was not a society that turned its back on nature, but one that worked in concert with it. They cultivated maize, yet they continued to rely heavily on the incredible bounty of the delta, fishing its teeming waters, hunting its game, and gathering its wild plants, creating a resilient and balanced way of life. Their artistic spirit is best seen in their pottery, which they crafted with remarkable skill. Vessels were not merely functional, they were canvases adorned with finely engraved lines, painted surfaces in bold red and white, and unique forms that evolved over centuries, each style telling a story of cultural continuity and change. The Plaquemine world was a fusion of deep local roots and new outside ideas, developing from the earlier Coles Creek traditions while absorbing influences from the sprawling Mississippian cultures to the north. So why did these vibrant mound-building communities eventually fade? While the arrival of Europeans with new diseases and social upheavals certainly accelerated the end, the decline had already begun. Shifts in the delicate environment of the Mississippi Delta, perhaps changes in river courses or seasonal flooding patterns, may have disrupted their agricultural and foraging lands, weakening the social fabric before the first European ever set foot there. The Plaquemine story did not simply end, however. Its legacy flowed directly into the historic Natchez culture, whose sun-worshipping chiefs and grand ceremonial mounds were observed by French colonists, providing a vital, living window into the ancient ceremonial practices of the indigenous Southeast. From the temple mounds of the Mississippi Delta, our search for lost civilizations takes a dramatic turn in elevation to a kingdom that built its cities in the Ethiopian lowlands. Egyptian pharaohs called it the land of the gods, a source of unimaginable wealth that fueled their most ambitious expeditions. The Kingdom of Punt was Africa's legendary trading partner, a civilization so central to Egyptian ritual and royal prestige that its exact location remains one of history's most tantalizing puzzles. For over 1,000 years, Egyptian ships braved the uncertain waters of the Red Sea, journeying to this fabled land to acquire what they could not produce themselves. They returned with holds overflowing with fragrant frankincense and myrrh, resins essential for temple ceremonies and the embalming of the dead. They brought back gleaming ebony wood, sacks of electrum gold, and pristine ivory tusks. The most vivid account comes from the mortuary temple of Queen Hatshepsut, where detailed reliefs immortalize her great voyage. These carvings show a land utterly foreign to the Egyptians, with conical houses built high on stilts and lush groves of strange, aromatic trees. They depict the Queen of Punt, a figure of distinct stature, alongside her husband, receiving the Egyptian envoys with a mixture of curiosity and royal grace. This artistic evidence strongly suggests the Puntites were not a minor tribe, but a complex society with its own leadership and architecture. The prominence of the queen in these negotiations hints at a social structure where lineage and authority may have been traced through the female line, a matrilineal system that would have seemed remarkable to the patriarchal Egyptians. So why, with such detailed records, can we not find Punt on any modern map? the search has spanned the Red Sea coast from modern-day Somalia and Eritrea to parts of southern Arabia. The descriptions in Egyptian texts are often poetic rather than precise, referencing a land east of Egypt and by the sea. The very landscapes of these coasts have been transformed by millennia of erosion and changing sea levels, potentially submerging the very ports where Egyptian ships once docked. The mystery of Punt stands as a powerful lesson in the fragility of geographical knowledge. It shows us that even a civilization documented by one of history's most meticulous record keepers can simply vanish from the map, its story reduced to fragments of art and tantalizing lists of treasures. From this elusive African kingdom known only through the eyes of its customers, we journey to a very different continent, to a people who built a remarkable civilization in the harsh, arid expanse of the American Great Basin. Their rock art stares out from canyon walls, figures with broad, trapezoidal bodies and haunting, hollow eyes. Across what is now Utah, the Fremont culture carved its identity into the stone between 700 and 1300 CE. They were neither fully farmers nor solely foragers, but masters of a flexible way of life. In the fertile river bottoms, they cultivated maize, building circular pit houses sunk into the earth for warmth in winter and coolness in summer. Yet they never abandoned the ancient knowledge of the hunt, tracking game across the high deserts and gathering wild plants. This dual existence produced a material culture entirely their own. They crafted unique one-piece moccasins from the hides of mountain sheep or bison, their soles still bearing the imprint of the human foot. Their pottery was often plain and gray, sometimes decorated with simple incised lines, a stark contrast to the black-on-white styles of their ancestral Puebloan neighbors to the south. But their most captivating legacy is in the clay figurines and the rock art panels. The figures, with their ornate headdresses, heavy necklaces, and prominent ear spools, seem to depict powerful beings, perhaps shamans mediating between the human and spirit world. Then, around 1300 CE, this distinct cultural fingerprint begins to fade. The pit houses were abandoned, the distinctive pottery styles ceased to be made, and the rock art stopped being created. So what happened to the people of the trapezoidal figures? There was no single dramatic invasion or catastrophe. Instead, a slow transformation seems to have unfolded. The climate was shifting, ushering in a drier, cooler period that would have made farming increasingly unreliable. In response, many Fremont communities likely made a deliberate choice. They set aside their corn seeds and storage pots, reverting to a fully nomadic foraging lifestyle. Without the need for permanent villages and the specific tools for farming, their unique material culture simply melted away, its elements absorbed into the broader, mobile hunter-gatherer societies of the Great Basin. Their story is a powerful testament to human adaptability, a reminder that cultural change is not always a story of collapse, but sometimes one of conscious return to an older rhythm of life. From this enigmatic culture of the American West, our journey concludes with a civilization that performed its own miracle of survival, building a glittering capital in the heart of the Iranian desert. A unique fusion of cultures clashed on the battlefield, creating a military system that humbled the Roman legions. The Parthian Empire perfected a devastating one-two punch of heavy and light cavalry that changed the face of ancient warfare. At the core of their army were the cataphracts, riders and horses, both encased in coats of interlocking metal scales, forming an unstoppable armored fist that could shatter enemy lines. Supporting them were the horse archers, lightly armored riders who could unleash a storm of arrows while riding at a full gallop, a tactic of controlled retreat known as the Parthian shot. This lethal combination met its ultimate test at the Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE, where a vastly outnumbered Parthian force annihilated a Roman army of over 40,000 men, capturing their treasured golden eagle standards in a blow that became a symbol of national shame for Rome. Yet for all their martial prowess, the Parthians were not mere destroyers. Their capital at Ctesiphon became a dazzling metropolis where Greek philosophy was debated in bustling academies. Persian administrative systems efficiently managed a vast empire, and nomadic traditions of horsemanship were celebrated as high art. They governed through a flexible feudal system, granting significant autonomy to powerful noble families who ruled their own territories, a structure that fostered local loyalty while binding the empire together through shared military service and trade interests. This cultural synthesis was etched into their very architecture, most famously in the monumental Iwan, a vast, vaulted hall open on one side that would later become the defining feature of mosques and palaces across the Islamic world. Their true power, however, flowed not from the point of a lance but from the caravan routes of the Silk Road. By controlling the vital land bridge between Rome and Han China, the Parthians grew immensely wealthy from tariffs, acting as the essential middlemen for the flow of silk, spices, and ideas across the continent. They carefully guarded their profitable position, even weaving tall tales to discourage Roman merchants from seeking direct routes to the mysterious land of Seers, the source of silk. So why did this adaptable and wealthy empire finally crumble? The very system that gave it strength became its fatal weakness. The powerful noble families, granted so much autonomy, grew increasingly independent and routinely plunged the empire into civil war over the question of royal succession. This internal fragmentation, combined with relentless military pressure from a resurgent Rome, fatally weakened the state. A final rebellion led by the Sasanian family, who claimed direct lineage from the ancient Persian emperors, overthrew the last Parthian king in 224 CE, ending 4 centuries of hybrid rule. The Parthian legacy is a masterclass in multicultural statecraft, a demonstration that strength can be found not in purity, but in the skillful weaving together of disparate traditions. Their story brings us to the end of our journey through these lost worlds. From the streetless city of Çatalhöyük to the horse lords of the steppe, what common thread binds these forgotten civilizations together? Each one, in its own way, grappled with the delicate balance between human ingenuity and the forces of nature, between social cohesion and the concentration of power, between adaptation and rigid tradition. Their ruins stand as silent teachers, reminding us that the greatest civilizations are not those that last the longest, but those that leave behind the most profound questions for those who come after. Their collective story is not a chronicle of failure, but a timeless map of human possibility. Our journey through these silent stones and vanished cities reveals a fundamental truth about humanity. Our shared history is not a single, straight line of progress, but a vast and intricate tapestry woven from countless experiments in how to live. From the desert kingdoms that coaxed life from sand to the jungle metropolises that sculpted rivers, every civilization we have encountered represents a unique answer to the universal human challenges of survival, community, and meaning. They show us that there is no one right way to build a society, only a brilliant diversity of paths forged by ingenuity and shaped by the land itself. Across continents and millennia, certain themes echo with a powerful resonance. We see the constant, delicate dance with the environment, the lifelines of trade that connected distant worlds, and the beautiful, creative fusion that occurs when cultures meet and exchange ideas. These are not isolated stories, they are variations on a grand, recurring human symphony. While the political power of these civilizations eventually faded, their influence did not simply vanish. The legal concepts of the Hittites, the water management of the Garamantes, the agricultural genius of Tiwanaku, These innovations were absorbed, adapted, and carried forward by the peoples who came after them. Their legacy lives on, often in ways we are only beginning to understand. The ongoing archaeological work at these sites is doing more than just filling in blanks on a map. It is actively rewriting our understanding of the human past, challenging old, narrow narratives that placed certain cultures at the center of history. It reveals the profound sophistication and independent achievement of indigenous civilizations across the globe, from the earthworks of North America to the jungle cities of the Amazon. As we navigate our own era of global challenges, from climate shifts to questions of social cohesion, these ancient stories speak to us with startling urgency. They offer sobering cautionary tales about the limits of resources and the fragility of even the most advanced systems, but they also provide inspiring proof of our species' boundless capacity for resilience and creative adaptation. We would love to hear which of these lost worlds captured your imagination the most. Was it the anonymous grandeur of Teotihuacan, the maritime prowess of the Champa, or the enigmatic script of the Minoans? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and we will provide links for you to explore further. The ground beneath our feet still holds countless secrets, and every new discovery has the power to reveal another thread in our magnificent, shared human story.